Now, social support can definitely moderate some of these. Now, who is the social support? Well, often it's family and close friends, uh, the people who we care about and care about us the most. Now, it allows you to work to process problems whenever you have this level of social support. You can talk to the people about your problems, talk about certain solutions. And once that you have worked through it, oftentimes that stressor is just simply resolved because you have dealt with it. Um, I often think about this and explain this in the terms of we've all been to a nightclub, a bar, or a restaurant or something where we get into an argument with somebody that maybe we know, maybe we don't. And 3 hours later, you think, that's what I should have said to that guy. Well, you were still ruminating on it the entire time. That stressor never left you alone. And as that stressor never left you alone, remember, it's not the one single event, it's the culmination, the the number of stressful events that were combined that caused the issue rather than one event. So you are not getting away from that. But by talking and working through something, you're able to deal with it better. Now, uh, so you can help to process your problems, and it also acts as a safety net. Whenever somebody knows that they have got somewhere to go if everything in the world goes wrong, that allows them to go out and take more risks and deal with things because the repercussions are nowhere near as severe. They know that if they flunk out of college, they can go home and they'll have a roof over their head. Whereas the people who don't have that, it is a far greater stressor because if they don't make it, they will be homeless. So that safety net allows us to not be as stressed out about certain events. Now, with that ability to process the rumination, that's what I said about that SOB. So whenever we process through, we eliminate that stressor. And the those who had a good social support structure were less likely to get injured. That's found by Petrie. They worked through their problems. They knew they had that safety net, and the resolution possibly allowed the stressor to go away. So they weren't ruminating on anything any longer. They had dealt with it. They had gone through. They had wise counsel, and they knew that they could trust things and they could move on. They didn't have to sit there and continually deal with something. On another side note, cognitive processing theory. Cognitive processing theory is a type of cognitive behavioral therapy found to be effective for treating PTSD. With PTSD, you may find yourself thinking very differently about yourself and your environment, particularly in the following 5 areas. Safety. You may doubt your ability to protect yourself and others. With trust, you may question your judgment and or the judgment and intentions of others. With control, you feel unable to control your life and or to influence the lives of those around you that you care about. Esteem. You view yourself and or others differently, perhaps seeing yourself as broken or others as evil. Intimacy. You may feel incapable of connecting with or being understood and accepted by others. These thoughts lead to negative emotions such as fear, guilt, anxiety, and anger and can halt your recovery. Cognitive processing theory focuses on teaching a set of skills that will help you challenge these negative thoughts and gain control of the impact they may have in your life. Now, cognitive processing theory is a way that you can help somebody change their thoughts to allow them to be able to recover. But we have to realize that we are not licensed clinical psychologists and we're not able to do this sort of thing with our athletes. But we should know about different aspects of different professions to know where to send the athlete. If they are having these sorts of issues and they don't have that social support, but they need to be able to deal with something, we need to know that there are things that can be done and who to get them to. Okay? So, and I often say stay in your lane. Now, people misinterpret that staying in your lane as you don't ever deal with anything and blah, 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 and it's an excuse to not work. Well, whenever I say stay in your lane, you'll notice that between these lanes, there are no walls. So the athlete can be shifted from lane to lane appropriately, and I can help walk them over the lane and then go back to mine whenever my professional expertise are most needed. But we need to get the help the athlete needs, and we need to be able to shuttle them from lane to lane wherever they need to be. So you stay in your lane. You may see some issues going on. You're not licensed to deal with those, but you are licensed to know that, hey, I care about this person, so I'm going to see if I can get them help. There's few blocks to prevent the athlete from going where they need to be. You travel in yours, they travel in theirs. If they're needing to PT, you change their travel lane to PT. If they're needing nutrition, change their travel lane to the RD. If they need counseling, change their travel lane to the licensed professional. You stay in your lane and you help them get to the lane that they need to be in. Okay? Now back to regular scheduled programming. Now, what can the strength and conditioning coach do with this academic stress and other things? Well, realize what the weeks are. You know ahead of time when these stressful weeks are. Handle loads appropriately. Either decrease intensity or decrease volume. Something needs to go down. And along those lines, I can actually remember a training cycle that we did at Southwest Missouri State University where it looked like everything was going fantastically. The week before we deloaded, we did doubles at, I believe it was 95% of 1RM. And the weights were moving so fast that we knew we were ready for something special after the deload whenever we came back to test. Unfortunately, whenever we came back to test, the athletes were getting stapled with 80% of their 1RM. And at the time, we couldn't figure out what had happened. We're like, well, we should have just tested 2 weeks ago. That's apparently when they peaked, and we messed that up. Well, later, after I found this out, I went back and I looked at the data. And I'll be darned if we did not, based off of, because I was a student there, based off of where the program had us test and where my syllabi were at that time, we were testing during midterms. So we need to know that we need to handle loads appropriately. You can either decrease intensity or decrease volume. You don't have to do both. If you want to have a extremely intense training session, by intensity I mean heavy, do a couple of singles at the heavier load. If you want to have a long training session, go down to 60%, 65% and do bodybuilding. If we're talking about practices, if you want to go fast and hard, make it really short. If you want to have a long practice, go more technical, tactical. Also, you need to get to know your athletes. Know them, know their changes in their mood, and remember that the changes in the mood and vigor, as Andy Fry had found, those were the primary markers for overtraining. Also, when they deserve love the least is when they need love the most, is a statement that Andrea Hootie made on Rob Taylor's podcast. And thinking back about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know that the love and safety is at the very bottom. And whenever somebody is acting out, it might not be the issue that you're dealing with. It might not be that the towel that you asked them to pick up off the floor or the additional set that you asked them to do. It was everything else, and that's why they acted out. And then the old adage, athletes don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If they don't feel like you care about them, especially when things get tough, they're not going to talk to you. They're not going to use you as a network. So if we look here at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, here is that safety and security. After food, water, shelter, air, clothing, and sleep is our safety and security. Health, employment, property, family, social stability. Then above that, the friendship, family, intimacy, and sense of connection. Guys, these are fundamental human needs of social support, social stability, friendship. If those aren't there, there's likely to be problems. They may be acting out because they're getting ready to get sick or hurt because they're dealing with stressors that they cannot deal with on their own. So that's something to stop and think about. It often, changes our perspective. I remember reading in the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. There was an example that he gave that he got on a subway and he's sitting there reading his paper. And then a couple of stops later, a man and 2 children get on the subway and the kids are going crazy and they're jumping all over people and knocking into things and knocking people over. And the The father is just sitting there, just completely disconnected and checked out, and he looks like he's catatonic. So finally, Stephen Covey gets up and he goes over and he goes, "Hey, would you take care of your kids, man? They knocked my paper out of my hands. They're acting crazy and all these other things. This is just unacceptable." And the man looks back at Stephen Covey and he says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We just lost my wife, their mother, at the hospital. We're coming home. I don't know how to deal with it, and I guess they're having a hard time too." So then in that moment, his perception and his perspective changed from being of, "Hey, this is completely unacceptable," to, "Oh my God, how can I help this person?" So maybe we need to realize that what they're acting out about is not just them being a turd, is that there is something that they need to deal with that they don't know how. When they need love the most is when they deserve it the least. We have to realize that sometimes the strength and conditioning coach may become a part of that athlete's social support system. I'm not saying that you're going out drinking with the athletes and partying and you're getting to know them and that means. No, you're an ear to listen, you're a sounding board for ideas, and you're showing them that you care. I can specifically remember an incident with a athlete where he and I butted heads. But one day it was just him and I'd read John C. Maxwell's Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And there was an acronym in there: family, occupation, recreation, and message. And while he and I were sitting down there, I thought, what the heck, you know what, I'm going to go through this acronym and see what happens. And I asked him about his family, and his mom was a nurse, and his dad was somebody who was very important in his life and was dealing with diabetes. And we were talking about different diabetes treatments through exercise and diet and things like that, because he was worried about his dad losing his foot. Because that's some things that happen with diabetes. He's trying to get him up and move around and everything. And we talked for a long time about his dad. And after that, it was a different relationship completely. Whereas before, he would, if I was walking in, he would turn around and walk out. Now he was coming over and sitting down and talking to me in my office. I became that ear to listen to, a sounding board for ideas. I became part of his social support and ways to help him. But it wouldn't have been that way before if I wouldn't have done that. And Rick McGuire started sports psychology for USA Track and Field. He was the track coach at Missouri for 26 years. In class one time, he said something very, very profound that I did not understand the first time. He said, "In my career as a track coach, I did way more coaching over playing cards than I ever did on the track." And that's just going to show that effects of social support and their impacts are far more wide-reaching and widespread than telling somebody to pick their knee up more. It did more for the athlete's career athletically, talking to them, playing cards on the bus, than coaching them on the track. If those are in charge of it all, again, same sort of thing that we just talked about. During a test week, reduce time or intensity of practice. If you want to maintain the intensity, keep it high, just make it practice short. If you want to make it long, decrease the intensity of the drills, but increase the tactical side. What are the plays? Do more walkthroughs. In conclusion, academic stress does affect the body. Obviously, you can predict academic stress. The traditional schedules, the syllabus, the dates, the deadlines. If you can predict it, you can account for it and possibly reduce the risk of injury. Now, I will also say that there are people who are asking, well, what about, was it the sleep? Was it the change in nutrition? Was it hydration? Was it caffeine? Was it this? Was it that? Was it... Guys, it doesn't matter. Man, this is a red flag. It doesn't matter the source of why they were hurt more often. We just know that they were. Could it be any of those other things causing additional stressors? Not just the test. Absolutely. But it doesn't change the fact that this is when it occurs. Okay? So, here's my references. Guys, if you have questions, you can get at me on Blackboard, or you can email me, bmann@miami.edu. Thank you for your time.